I initially wanted to do basically any alternative fuel project. I thought I'd start with, am I supposed to look at the camera? Okay. I thought I'd start with actually biodiesel was my first idea. Go with a veggie powered truck. And I did a bunch of research and discovered that in order to afford a diesel vehicle, I had to get one that was no longer roadworthy. So I scrapped that plan. And this was right around the time that senior projects at college were coming up, and my dad started sending me ideas. And he came up with, he stumbled across something from, I believe David Brin had the book, the Gasifier, and it was all about building stratified downdraft gasifiers for vehicles. This is actually just a jacket. Inside of this is a piece of 12-inch diameter, quarter-inch wall snowmaking pipe. It's 32 inches long, I believe. It goes down, starts at about that level at the bottom, and then there's a plate that holds it up. It's like just a disc with a hole in it that sits on top of this barrel, and the tube is welded to the plate, so it extends up a little ways into the top. And the fire actually happens inside that tube. The upper part's just a fuel hopper. Intake is up through the top here. And so air will pass down through the fuel, and there's a combustion zone where all the chips burn. So you get carbon dioxide and water. Byproducts are pass through a hot bed of coals, which is sitting in there's a stainless steel bowl. It's essentially a colander that collects all the hot coals, and the oxygen molecules the oxygen wants to combine with the carbon in the hot coals, so it pulls the oxygen off of the carbon dioxide in the water, which then results in combustible gases again. You get hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and I guess the nitrogen passes through the system. Column of wood chips, and in theory the combustion zone doesn't travel up and down. It stays at about the same spot all the time, and so the hot gases come out through the outside, and the idea is to dump a little bit of heat, because the colder you can get it, the better, and to dump as many tars as possible. They'll condense out first, and they go through that thing you can see there if you walk around to the side a little further, which is it's really just a particle separator. So the gas comes in from the side, and it has to spin, which throws the heavy particles to the outside, but this tube comes down below a little ways, so the gas itself has to spin around, come down, and then go up the middle, which settles out a lot of the larger particles. And then there's a cap on the bottom you can open, and it's usually full of soot, essentially. And then this is it's essentially a packed bed filter. It's divided in the middle, and there's a grate on the bottom, so there's an air gap below, and it's filled with wood chips. And what this does is you get more cooling in here, which condenses out more tars. It also filters out the rest of the particulates, and as many of the condensed tars as possible on one side, and then across the open bottom and up the other side, which drops out as many more particles and as much more tar as possible. And then from there it comes up, goes all the way to the front of the truck, and goes into the last condenser, which was an experiment. It really is not sufficient. It should be set up more like a radiator than this, but it does work. And so the gases come in the top, go down to the bottom, and then come up off the bottom and go around you can see the valve there. They go around the radiator.
They go around?
Yeah, they kind of go like that. It's just because they got to go around this guy.
Oh,
so they come up, and then I shortened the existing intake. It's not really the intake manifold, but this part, so that I could have the gases tie into it, and then also have a valve to throttle down the cold air intake, which will force the engine to pull in the wood gas. So that's my mixing valve, so that the more I close that down, the richer it runs. For the engine, I really want to be cold enough to have condensed all of the tars out, if any of them were still produced. And then you would actually want like a paper filter. Once the system is clean enough that a paper filter wouldn't get clogged instantly, you do want something to prevent any tar at all if something goes wrong from getting into the engine, because that was a pretty major problem. Right. Gas coming in, right. And then this is normal cold air coming in, and the whole system is under vacuum. It depends on the engine to pull gases through the system. So I have a controller, a lever to control this. This is just a normal throttle body off of, actually this same truck a year older. And I can control it from the inside. So the more I close down the cold air, because the engine creates vacuum, all engines do when they on the intake stroke. And so the more I close it down, the more gas it tries to pull, so it richens the mixture. I bought a tuning module that most of the Mustang guys use. It's called Tweaker, and because I had to shut off the I had to shut off the fuel injectors and modify the timing. So I have that inside as well, and that plugs into the back side of the existing computer. So it's all computer controlled. It's electronic ignition and it's fuel injected. And because I wanted to run solely on wood gas, I needed to turn off the fuel injectors. And wood gas is a much slower burning fuel, so you have to advance the spark so you get your peak cylinder pressure at the right time. It takes about 15 minutes to get the system hot enough to run the truck, but I can't just start it up and then drive away on gasoline and then switch over from inside the cab. There's the big ball valve at the front has to be closed. The engine won't run on gasoline with this valve open, so I have to get out and open this valve in order to switch to wood gas. So it allows too much air to get into the engine on gasoline, and it stalls out. Increasing number of people who have experimented with this in computer-controlled vehicles, but the vast majority, at least in the past, have been carbureted, just because there were more carbureted vehicles. My goal was to get this so that it was inspectable and running on the road with OBD2, which is what I don't know how much longer that runs, but that's what the current codes are. I pull the cleanout off to light it, and that you can see the steel colander, the stainless steel colander, and I basically crumple up some newspaper underneath it, and then light it with a torch, and then sort of close this up a little bit, let the coals start to burn. And once the coals have started to burn, I close this up and turn on the blower, which actually pulls air through it just to the backside of the pack bed filter. Okay. And then it pushes out the gas here, and at some point, once it's been running for 15 minutes or so, I can actually hold the torch up to this and you get a big fireball. Flow is down through the fuel hopper, down through the steel pipe, and then out to the sides and up in this this whole thing is empty, so it's just a jacket. So the gases go down, up around the sides, and they come out at that one point into the cyclone separator. It takes draft through it to get the fire started and keep the fire going. So this has a shut off. So once it's running, I shut this off and then I can run the truck on it. He told me about a friend of his who built one and blew himself up. I don't know exactly how he did it, but presumably he did it. I have seen this when it's almost completely out of wood chips. It gets doing this this very weird thing where at least this one, it was doing a rhythmic sort of whoomp, 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 whoomp. You'd get these little explosions because it would get really hot. This was when there was like this much wood chip in it. It would get really hot, produce a whole bunch of gas, and then somehow it would suck in oxygen, and that stuff would ignite, and it would just got into this cycle where it would just do that, and I just very quickly filled it up with wood chips so that it would stop doing that, and I survived the experience. But in theory, if it's working right, 20 pounds of dry wood chips, that's something below, I believe, 8% moisture content. 20 pounds of wood chips is about equivalent to 1 gallon of gasoline. My testing was not extensive enough to really have good numbers on that. I do know that in a neighborhood, a ballpark 60-mile drive, I used about 8 inches. So it was full to the brim, and it had settled 8 inches. Some of that may have been just settling from being on the road, but I was definitely impressed with how far I went on that many. I was very pleased with that. Cool.